Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the latest spin. I'm Mike Spinner, student athlete world USA. And as usual, it's Thursday night. What better way to start a weekend than spending a few minutes with me? And last week I had probably a little too much fun in this on the show with to say a certain college basketball team and their exit, but all in good fun. And Tim, if you're watching, and I know you are, your Badgers are the 2026 Women's Ice Hockey National Championships yet again, national champions yet again. So all is not lost, Tim. And in fact, the men's ice hockey team, because the NCAA men's ice hockey tournament kicked off tonight, they won. So maybe, just maybe, Wisconsin is going to be the new home of college hockey. They're a few wins away from doing it. So have faith in the Badgers, Tim. Maybe not in basketball and football, but man, once you get them on the ice, those Badgers can fly. Let's see what happens over the next couple of weeks there. And as for Student Athlete World USA, different week, similar message. We're just getting towards the end here as we approach April. And we are putting the final touches on our tours for this summer, which is always so exciting. My biggest project right now is filling our coaching positions, which I'm almost done with that. We should have some announcements pretty soon. And then we're full steam ahead for the summer. It is hard to imagine. We're almost there. The most wonderful time of the year, excuse me, as we just kind of hit that home stretch, get ready to fly, getting ready to see the world and compete. And that's my favorite part of the year. It's like, we're about to unwrap our Christmas presents. Can't wait. So my message to you, we're definitely still in the hunt in lacrosse and ice hockey. We have a few spots, and we have a select few basketball spots remaining across a few different tours. So this is it, folks. Get those applications in, get those interviews scheduled, because we're pretty much out of space. We can accommodate some of you, but not all of you, because I'm getting applications still almost every day. So if you're watching this and it's on the radar, by all means, get in touch with me, get that application done, get the interview going, because at some point on this show, and it could be as early as next week, we're going to say we're done and we're on to 2027. And we're already playing 2027, which is part of my excitement for this time of year. We're looking ahead to next year as well. But certainly an exciting time to be us. And if you've interviewed already and you're still thinking about joining us, by all means, get in touch. Let's talk, because I just don't want you to be in a situation where you text or call me, say, hey, Mike, still want to go? Remember we interviewed? And I'm telling you, we can't anymore. We're full. We are really getting to that point. So now, what in the world? What in the world this week is brought to you by Nike, and one of the biggest sponsors we've ever had, Nike. So welcome aboard. And it's what in the world, because I cannot believe how expensive Nike products have become. And I'm not going to get into like the whole politics of tariffs and all that, and what it's really meant and what it means, because I don't make these decisions. But here's my question to Nike. And if you haven't looked recently, certain products that are fairly popular remain somewhat reasonably priced, like Under Armour. This is my high school lacrosse team shirt. It's a No Frills brand, and it was pretty reasonable. But I personally, when it comes to sport clothing, I lean towards Nike. I'm a big Nike guy. I just think it's a good product. It's durable. It's fashionable, comfortable, etc. And so recently, I'm the coach of a team. I help run a travel program in my sport, and I'm just a consumer. I cannot believe the price of Nike products. And more so, you've seen an increase in price for Nike products, in my opinion, more so than any other brand. So whether it's tariffs or not, something's going on with Nike. that has made their product insanely expensive recently. I'm talking about the last like few months, where I want to go buy a pair of sweatpants or a pair of shorts for the summer, or even a t-shirt, and we're talking like that $20 to $25 item earlier in 2026 that is now like $40. We're talking about doubling of costs, even at the team level. When you buy a team product, at that quantity, things tend to get cheaper. That is not the case with Nike right now. And it's just very surprising. So, Nike, what in the world, folks? Come on, bring it back down here. And I'm saying that because I just can't imagine that the average Joe consumer, whether it's a coach for a team or just an individual consumer trying to buy nice clothing, I cannot imagine that that average Joe consumer is going to purchase Nike products longer term with the prices being the way they are. If you don't believe me, just take a look. Go online, look up your favorite product. Now, I'm wearing a Nike hat, so that's cool. They're sponsors. Of course, I got to represent. But I just can't imagine that the average consumer right now is saying, I'm going to keep buying Nike product, even though I'm paying 30, 40% more than what I did a few months ago. Look it up yourself if you don't believe me. Nike is out of control right now. So do something about it, folks, because I like Nike products. I'm just not buying them right now. I know I'm not the only one who feels that way. So what in the world? What in the world this week will focus right now on kind of the ramifications of the NCAA tournament. So a week ago, I spent an awful lot of time discussing High Point University's triumph over Wisconsin in the first round of the NCAA tournament and kind of what the long-term ramifications are. And I had a lot of fun with Tim. I think he's still angry at me. We haven't spoken much this week. So, Tim, I'm sorry, but not sorry. You know how it goes. And quite frankly, my St. John's team tomorrow, they play against Duke. Trip to the Elite Eight on the line. And, Duke is a heavy favorite. And, for me, you never bet against Rick Pitino, just kind of something I have felt as a college basketball fan forever. It's a game I'm a little nervous about. Obviously, Duke is the better team coming in, but St. John's has Rick Pitino, so we'll see what happens. But it's exciting as a St. John's fan to kind of be at the end of March and still have such a big game. It just hasn't happened very often in my lifetime. So go Red Storm, go Johnnies. Good luck to Rick Pitino and his team. But Gino Auriemma, the legendary UConn women's basketball coach, he had a press conference today, and he brought up something very interesting that is, I think, not really enough of a focus right now. That really, it's got to at some point come onto the radar. So his statement was that Title IX is kind of gone. Now, as a women's sport coach for 26 years, I can attest personally, even though I'm a male coaching women's sports, I can attest personally to the impact that Title IX has had on women's sports. It was a landmark piece of legislation that to this day is benefiting women's sports. And albeit in a controversial fashion, because there are men's sports such as lacrosse, I think being the most prominent, and ice hockey up there as well, that do not grow as quickly, in large part because of gender equity. And not saying Title IX is wrong. I'm saying it's, certain times you need to fix something. And I think not allowing men's sports to grow while promoting the growth of women's sports, I think, has not been the intention of why there is a Title IX. So anyway, what Gino Auriemma essentially said, and I see a lot of validity to this point, Title IX is over. I don't believe that. But Title IX, the landscape has changed because now with NIL money, with revenue sharing, with just straight up payments to college athletes, the kind of division of monies is not necessarily being legislated by Title IX. So that football quarterback that might be getting like $8 million a year right now to go play in the SEC or ACC or Big Ten, there isn't that proportionality offset on the women's side. So you're not seeing like the best women's basketball player currently in the NCAA tournament getting $8 million or millions of dollars even. Whereas the elite football player is, and I'm sure the elite men's basketball player is. So from that standpoint, we're not seeing the enforcement of Title IX in a way that benefits women's sports when it comes to simply revenue and when it comes to being paid and making money. And personally, I am against NIL still. I don't like the system as it is. Every time in the NCAA tournament, a basketball player has a big game and it's not for a top tier team, the first thought is, oh, where's this guy going to be playing next year, and who's going to pay him more money to play? I hate that. I just think that the NCAA tournament has become a showcase. It always was a showcase for future NBA players, but right now it's a showcase for transfer portal. Oh, I put up 30, against Kentucky, so next year I'm going to go to Duke and earn $5 million to play. Like, that's what it is. It's essentially a professional college basketball showcase, but it's not equitable. All right. And I guess my question is why? Why is the money that is being paid to these athletes not being done so in a manner that's proportional? I think it's a very fair question to ask. I know the answer. And I know what the NCAA will say, because name, image, likeness. So if someone's getting, if a male athlete's getting $5 million a year for his name, image, and likeness to be utilized, that's not, I guess, a part of the NCAA's governance structure. It's more individual capitalism. So I almost entrepreneurial, if you will. So I get it, but let's call a spade a spade here. It's a paycheck being organized by these schools and their collectives, and the money itself is not being distributed equitably. So if there were another Caitlin Clark on the women's side right now, the face of the sport for women's basketball, which I'm not sure there's a singular player at that level right now. I think there's about 20 really good ones, but not that one, generational talent on the women's side, or at least not right this minute. She's going to cash in a little bit if there were, if Caitlin Clark were, say, still playing, but not the way that they're on the men's side. And it's like, so on one hand, Title IX, landmark legislation, all right, changed the face of women's sports in the best possible way and did so permanently. You look at the growth of women's sports since the 1970s, when Title IX became a thing, to now, this is the most exciting, most successful, most robust chapter of women's sports history because of Title IX. That's a fact. You can't dispute that. But now we have entered a different chapter of college sports, where now they're getting paid lots of money. All right. There's for certain sports, there's a ton of NIL money going out there. What about the women? How are they not a part of this? Why are they not at the table? So it's like the table's been set. Athletes are getting paid. Elite athletes are making lots of money. That football quarterback is being well fed. He's got his plate, his knife, his fork, his table settings, and he's been fed. It feels like on the women's side, there's a seat there. There's money available. There's no plates, no place settings, nothing really to eat. You're not reading about that women's athlete making millions of dollars to play their sport, whereas it's happening on the men's side. So the question, and what Gino Auriemma had to say had some validity to it. But to me, the question isn't, is Title IX still alive? It is very much still alive. The question is, why is Title IX not factored in here? Why is it that a football quarterback, probably the next generational football quarterback, who may not even be playing right now, so that sixth grader who in 3 years could be the next, like, Tom Brady, could make NFL money while in college? Well, why not that next Caitlin Clark? It's not legislated as such. The money's not being rolled out that way. And so as a result, if the next generation of college athletics is going to be guided by NIL money, by salaries, by just players getting paid, if that will define success or failure for the next generation of college athletics, and Title IX is what help this generation of college athletics become what it is for women's athletics, well, then Title IX has to continue into that next generation where players are getting paid lots of money. And right now it isn't. And what I'm looking at from my perch, spent 23 years in college athletics and coached women's sports my entire adult life. From my perspective, I see an issue coming. Is it going to be groundbreaking? We'll see. But I think by trying to solve some problems in college athletics with the NCAA, by paying their athletes, NIL, whatever you want to call it, they've created even more issues. And the NCAA right now, their baseball term, recently they're hitting about 200. It's a lot of things about the NCAA that need to change very quickly. And this might become a big one of them. I'm just wondering what's going to happen when that next Caitlin Clark comes along, that national hero of a women's athlete. She's coming along real soon. If you look at just the landscape of women's college sports, every year or two, there's that women's, at least basketball player, if basketball is the most prominent women's sport, that transcendent talent in women's basketball. Maybe not there this year. She'll be there next year, the year after. The next Caitlin Clark. But if she's not making the same amount of money that you're seeing that big time men's player, then what is Title IX there for? It's a good question to ask. And that's it for the latest spin this week. It's always great fun. And as always, we got very few roster spots remaining, folks. There's only one way to do it, only one way to get one. Go to studentathleteworld.com, complete your application, interview with me, and pack your bags. Everyone, have a great weekend. Go St. John's, beat Duke. You're going to hear about from Tim if they don't, because Tim lives in North Carolina. So we got a whole New York City, North Carolina thing going on tomorrow night, Tim. Hope you're watching. I'd love to see St. John's go all the way. Have a feeling it's not going to be their night, but with Rick Pitino, you never know. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next week.